Let's start with North Korea and developments there, though. The South Korean government says that there are signs that Pyongyang could be preparing to carry out a fourth nuclear test. The Unification Minister, Ryo Kil-jae, told a parliamentary hearing that stepped-up activity had been detected at the North's nuclear test facility, a pattern similar to the situation seen ahead of the last nuclear test. Well, Japan has meanwhile said that its armed forces have been ordered to shoot down any North Korean missile which heads towards its territory. We can get reaction from David Willis in Washington. That will be in just a moment. First, though, let's talk to John Sudworth, who's in the South Korean capital of Seoul now. John, interesting developments. Every day there seems to be just a little bit more. Give us your reaction to this one.
Well, of course, a fourth nuclear test by North Korea would be seen as extremely provocative and significant. What we heard today from Ryo Kil-jae, a senior South Korean minister with responsibility for North Korean policy, is that he couldn't comment on the specific intelligence, but when asked about a news report in one of this morning's papers that there was indeed stepped-up activity at that main atomic testing site up near the Chinese border, he said that indeed there were those signs. What's unclear, though, at the moment, it seems, is whether those signs are being read as genuine preparations for nuclear testing or simply as a ruse designed to prolong and to precipitate this sense of military crisis.
John, also, when you look at the reaction as well, Japan making very clear that it would shoot down any missiles that head towards its territory, China as well, surprising comments from it over the weekend. No one's sitting back and not taking notice, are they?
Well, this is, as always, a very complex, triangulated set of geopolitical relations here, and everybody is trying to carefully calibrate their responses in line with everybody else and in response to everybody else. China, of course, doesn't want a nuclear crisis on the peninsula, but it also fears the American response. It doesn't like the US moving military assets into this region. America is trying to send a message of containment and deterrence to North Korea, while also trying to fall short of provoking it further. China wants to pressure Pyongyang, but it doesn't want to turn off the tap completely and precipitate a collapse. So in many senses, what you end up with is something that looks like North Korea has everybody dancing to its own tune. As always, it is able to play a very weak military hand to its extraordinary advantage.
It certainly is an interesting dance. John, thanks for the moment. Let's go over to David Willis, who's in Washington. David, John, they're just talking about the message that the United States is giving. It's cautious but firm.
You're right, Naga, and there are reports early this morning in the New York Times that the United States and South Korea have actually drawn up plans for a response, a swift response, should there be any action by North Korea. This is, by all accounts, hitting the source of any North Korean attack with similar weapons. Now, we already know that B-52 bombers and stealth fighters have been moved by the United States into the area there, but anything that is provocative from North Korea will, I think, be something of a surprise, given the fact that the United States has today announced that it's cancelling an exercise involving its Minuteman III ballistic weapon, and that was due to take place off the coast of California. They've cancelled it because they thought it would be seen as provocative to North Korea in the current climate. And of course, the sign of the US concern is the fact that the top military official in South Korea at the moment, James Thurman, who was due to come back and give evidence to Congress this week about the crisis on the Korean Peninsula, has been told to stay put in Seoul.
Still some encouraging signs. As I mentioned before, China warning North Korea not to escalate tensions. That's quite a good sign, perhaps, and also in reaction to the postponement of that missile test that you mentioned.
That's right, yes, and it's interesting because there have been criticism here, Naga, from congressmen of China for not condemning, doing enough to condemn North Korea as these people saw it over the course of the last month, when the rhetoric, of course, has become increasingly bellicose from North Korea. Well, today we had the Chinese president coming out with the strongest comments yet on this crisis, saying that no country should be allowed to throw the region and indeed the world into chaos for what he called selfish gain. So a sign perhaps there, Naga, that it's not just the United States and South Korea that are starting to get frustrated with North, but also its biggest ally, its only ally, in fact, China as well.
It's interesting. As John Sudworth mentioned, it's a very interesting dance that is being played at the moment. David in Washington, thanks very much. And, of course, thanks very much to John in Seoul.